Easy guys, welcome back to Snakes and Adders Reptile Advice. This is episode 62. This series has been on quite a long hiatus. Simply the guide videos and the growth of the YouTube and Facebook pages has resulted in a load of extra business, which we're really pleased about, but also it puts me and Paul under the cosh. We're meeting ourselves coming backwards most of the time. But when we first started out the YouTube channel, one of the major drivers was being able to help on a slightly more personal level, not just do the care guides, but be able to answer maybe individual questions. And to that end, we've started to get a few questions coming through, so I thought that I'd revisit trying to help people or offer advice if possible. So this is from Kuba. Hey Chaz, I was wondering if you could help me. I'm a beginner snake keeper and I found some incredible snakes on your website, those being a Kunashir Island rat snake, Russian rat snake and a Taiwanese beauty. All of these are great beginner snakes. However, I am concerned about the brumation of the Kunashir and Russian rats, as it seems like a process which inexperience could cause problems in. I am familiar with other aspects of keeping, such as humidity, temperatures, enclosure size and handling, but brumation of the more inclement species makes me unsure of myself. I have seen your video on brumation, however still feel unready. I would be very grateful if you could help me in any way, shape or form. Thanks for your time and keep up the good work, Kuba. Well, thank you for the question, Kuba. It's an excellent question, and given the time of year, pertinent as well. So that plenty of people are going to be going through the processes of they're either starting to do the fasting period prior to any brumation changes, or they'll be doing it imminently. And depending on the species will depend on how deep you have to go or how deep you should go. And the purpose, we need to discuss what the purpose of brumation is, why we do it, you know, and there's a whole heap of things really that we need to go through, but don't allow it to stress you out. This is part of a animal's natural life cycle, and the same way that we would give them a daytime high or a nighttime low, we're just doing this over an annum rather than a day. And if you're capable of manipulating the temperatures between day and night, I see no reason why you wouldn't be able to manipulate for the winter period. I mean, if you've done a fair bit of the research already and you're happy with the keeping with regards to temperatures, humidity, all that sort of stuff, then realistically all this is a case of doing is temperature manipulation. Your animals will only be brumated if it's appropriate for that species to brumate. You wouldn't necessarily deeply cycle or season any of the tropical boids or pythons because they simply don't need it, from being within the tropics or mainly a lot of the species being equatorial. Their seasonal changes are minimal, and actually we rely more on barometric pressure and other such changes to actually induce breeding behaviours and copulation, whereas the animals that are temperate outside the tropics potentially have frost or have a serious winter, then we're going to have to think about doing something a bit more serious. See, years and years ago, 25-30 years ago, we would brumate corns and kings and milks and bulls, pangs and gophers, and we would take them right down, whereas fast forward 15-20 generations of captive bred corn snakes and people don't even really bother cycling them that deeply anymore. Some don't even bother cycling them at all, and they just breed. So, you know, as we move forward, the necessity to do it, to induce copulation, may well become less and less. And certainly, if trends within some of the more popularly bred colubrid species are to be believed, then that potentially will be the case. Such as the Russian rat snake and Japanese rat snake, yes, they are northern temperate regions. And yeah, they're really getting hammered in the winter. The Japanese rats have a pretty harsh winter. The Russian rats have an insane winter. Hingan Mountains in Siberia, winter nighttime low of -38 degrees Celsius. It's insane to think that a reptile can survive that, but that is kind of testament to just how tough this species is. So while it's beginning to make you nervous, consider that pretty much barring freezing this snake, what you're about to do to it for its winter cool down will be less harsh than it has to put up with in the winter in its natural habitat. So a lot of people, when it comes to the Russian and Asian species that are really require a cool down, or maybe Canadian species or real northern USA Oregon and those sorts of places, or even Canada, you know, with the garters and things, they refrigerate their animals, because what we need to be able to do is cool them down, but we mustn't give them a frost. So like a lot of people use an under-counter fridge, and you've got an internal thermostat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and if we just click it to number 1, that'll hover around 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. We know that it won't frost, and we don't necessarily need to have it out of eyesight either. So it could be in the reptile house with the rest of the reptile collection, and they're still there, ready for us to check them once a week. Maybe give them a little drink, check that they're okay and that everything's all right. So realistically, they're still on hand, and they're not as forgot about as people maybe panic that they are. You know, particularly the fridge idea, that it seems to keep it slightly more fresh in the mind, that because they're right there in front of you. When you pile them away in a garage or a shed or an outhouse, they're easily sort of forgot about or put to one side, and then that's where issues will start to arise. So maybe it's not as crazy an idea as you think. The brumation is there as part of a natural cycle, and the animals will store weight all year round, waiting for this harsh winter to come, to then rely on the fat stores built up throughout the rest of the year to be able to see them through to the following spring. So this is where the cycle comes. Now, for younger animals, if you were to say buy a Kunishir or a Russian rat snake, this wouldn't necessarily rear its head for 3 or 4 years, because the animals we can raise just in standard colubrid husbandry, 28-30 degrees, and maybe a 22-24 degree night, and just feed them a standard, and they'll just grow like weeds. They grow like any other corn or rat snake. And it's only really when we start to hit sexual maturity that they're then going to start to stutter or maybe misfire, and that is as a result of, obviously, the sex drive increasing and the animals wanting to procreate. Now, to be able to do that, they go through a season. The males produce sperm, so they call this spermatogenesis, and the girls produce ova, oogenesis, and this prepares them ready for the coming season. And if we try to breed them without a serious winter drop, we can then have an infertile clutch or litter as a result of this. So that's why, to hedge our bets, particularly with the cooler stuff, that we brumate them, particularly if we're going to be looking to breed them, because what we don't want is your female to slug out or lay a load of infertile eggs, as this potentially puts her at risk. So there's method to the madness, if you like. People who've got big collections will see it as maybe a period of respite, where they can maybe concentrate on a couple more of the more tropical things or the more needy things through the winter, but the real bomb-proof hardy stuff is actually quite happily sat in a fridge, then there's no issue. And that's, you know, the way to view it. People view it as, oh god, this is the light part of the season now, I can relax a bit, I've got all these snakes now, I haven't got to panic, you know, and they're fine, they're in the fridge, and I can maybe think about doing some other stuff, so writing or a holiday or whatever it is that you want to do, they're fine. If we keep them warm all year round, the risk is that their metabolic rate stays as it always was, and they can lose weight dramatically. This isn't healthy and it isn't natural, so that's why we would cool them down during these periods, to try and slow and stabilise that metabolic rate and allow the attrition of body fat and body mass to slow down and become more naturalistic in the way that it happens. And this also allows then for the sperm count to increase. At no point really would I want people to be scared or worried about brumation as some sort of ogre that's going to come up and bite you in the ass. Whether it's the Russian rat snakes or the Japanese rat snakes or the horsefield tortoises. I mean, horsefields will spend 7 months of the year in the wild, in brumation, and only out feeding sort of 4 or 5 months of the year. It's amazing just how hardy they are, you know. So we can, you know, they're prepared for it. Their body is designed for it, and for a period of the year to almost be shut down. So you're not going to be hurting your animal. And in actual fact, a lot of people consider that we're doing them a favour by allowing them to go through this natural process. Now, with complete clarity and being completely open, initially after coming out of brumation, there may be a slight increase in how aggressive animals are, but that's simply down to hunger. Having not fed for 3 or 4 months, they're ravenous. But after a good 3 or 4 meals where you've really filled them up, this will abate and calm back down. So don't panic. I hope that helps. Don't let things panic you, don't let things scare you. That's not what this hobby is about. But the same way that as a new keeper you need to be able to maybe understand the basics of thermostatic control, of humidity, of setting up an enclosure, thermoregulation in the gradients between hot and cold end, being able to hide and getting out of line of sight and offer that stability and security to your animals. They are all principles of care. Now, on a daily basis, we're doing a daytime high and a nighttime low. On an annual basis, we're doing a summer, and we're also then going to do a winter. It's no different, and it's certainly not something I would panic about. Frame it differently in your mind. You know, the animal isn't just going to drop dead and die. Well, I'm not telling you to refrigerate your royal python, which will just die. I'm telling you to potentially refrigerate an animal that comes from a region of Siberia, where in winter it's minus 38 degrees Celsius at the surface, and they might be 50 foot down a burrow or some fissure or crack in a cave just to find somewhere that isn't going to frost over. I mean, what they have to put up with is ridiculous, and what we're doing is easy by comparison. So don't worry about hurting the animals. On a side note, no animal where a question mark about its health exists should be brumated. An animal that's had an operation or any illness within the last, say, annum. Animals that are proven to be carrying maybe internal parasites shouldn't be brumated until this is dealt with. So I saw a post the other day, someone posted about, should I brumate my Herman's tortoise? I had a fecal exam done. The results came back. There's a populace of pinworm within its guts. So yeah, don't brumate it. Because what the pinworms potentially do is upset the metabolic rate, and therefore it sheds weight too quickly. It puts the animal under too much stress or duress. Because in captivity they're not in a state of homeostasis. They only achieve homeostasis in the wild. Homeostasis is always the golden goose that we try and chase, and we're always trying to keep them as well as we can, but it's very difficult, you know. So if there's a question mark, if there's a health issue, if there's even just the slightest doubt, then don't do it, because you would be safer to give yourself that extra bit of time to really sit and think about it, make sure your animal's 100%, and then you can think about putting it through the brumation process. But as always, such as ourselves, Snakes and Adders, we're on hand. We offer advice all the time. We'll be doing bits and bobs of advice videos again as time allows. They won't be as thick and as fast as they were previously, just because we simply haven't got time. Me and Paul are eternally grateful to the support that our wonderful customers have shown us over the past 18 months. The change has been exponential, so it really has made a massive difference to the way that the shop runs. So yeah, enjoy herping. See you all again soon, guys. Cheers.